So we're here to talk about the budget, and I'm here kind of as a voice of the youth to ask you some questions. First, I want to say thank you for selecting me, and I guess my first question is why did you select me and I guess the other presenters?
Well, I think there's a lot of persons that get a lot of voices out in the community, and we want to make sure that we connect and share. I think that some of the things that you see in the budget, some of them may be hard to digest, and it's a question of trying to make sure you explain it, because you can't necessarily get a lot out in a 20,000 word document, which is what the budget was. And though it even has a lot of detail, there's a lot of things that can be explored more in depth. So we wanted to take this opportunity to do that, especially for issues that are relevant to younger persons.
Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely think that reading it, I think at first glance, as someone who hasn't interacted with these types of documents a lot, it was confusing. It was very confusing. But I think that I got some major blocks out of it, but where can people find more accessible information about the budget if the document is, let's say, less accessible information-wise? Is there a place where people can find, and that's how I found it at least, is there a place where people can find more accessible information to understand what's happening better?
So this is why we're doing sessions like this,
Gotcha.
to make sure we can try to relay that information.
Okay.
I mean, the budget itself is complex and long. It covers all the ministries. When you're talking over $1 billion in spending, it's significant. So there's been various ministers who've been speaking in various aspects and avenues about the things that are underneath their particular ministries. And for myself, as Minister of Finance, I'm speaking at the broader overall economic policy of the government. But there's been lots of ministers who are doing individual talks, individual sessions, and speaking in various news organizations, press conferences, etc. And all that information is online. But it is, as you say, very complex, and it's hard for people to, understand and grasp. But if I were to sum it up in a way, I say that we're looking to continue the path of economic growth after the pandemic, wanting to make sure that we have more investments in social services, which are necessary to cope with some of the issues and challenges of which we are facing here in Bermuda, while making sure that we reduce the burden of taxation, which is the best response to which the government can do when citizens are dealing with increased costs due to global inflation. Yeah,
and that's something I saw, and something that I know myself and a lot of other people are appreciative of, and I'm excited to see that implemented. I think that, so I asked a lot of my peers what they would want to ask and what their questions were, and something that I noticed is a growing frustration, especially with artists, but I find that young people in general, a growing frustration is that they feel like in order to succeed, they have to leave. So what are you doing to create opportunities for artists and create opportunities for young Bermudians who want to stay in Bermuda and who don't feel like they're being pushed out either due to expensive cost of living or opportunities here? How are you helping to retain our young people?
Well, I think the most important thing that you need to do is to address some of the root causes of those challenges. And when we talk about the root cause of costs of living, that is a combination of taxes, which are things that the government can control, and there's things that the government can't control, which is, the costs of goods, which are rising around the world, which is going up. And so the best response to which you can do is you can make sure that persons have more money in their pockets to cope with these matters. And that's the reason why you respond with a reduction in taxation. And we reduce in this budget taxes for 86% of the business in the country and 86% of the workers in the country. And that is a significant swath. When you start by saying we're going to cut taxes for everyone who's making under $132,000, in most countries they look at you like you're crazy. But that is just a recognition that in Bermuda it is certainly a different construct. The other side of that, of course, is making sure that we make things available and accessible for persons. And when we talk about that, we know that the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sport has been doing more. There's more investment that has been given. They're putting more money into their cultural programs this year, and those are things which were funded inside the budget. We've come through a very long period, which is the technical word of austerity, and austerity is continually reducing government spending and government investments in other areas. But I have now signaled that the end of austerity is here, and we're now getting to a place where we're going to balance our budget while making sure that we make the investments which are necessary for growth. To your particular aspect, there's a lot of reasons why persons may choose to stay or persons may choose to leave. And from the creative community, it's certainly something that's very difficult because our creative scene here is limited. And you'll have limitations in any way, shape, or form where you have an island of only 20 square miles and 65,000 people. It is difficult, and there are opportunities that do exist in other jurisdictions which will not be possible to create here just because of our size and scale. So that is not necessarily a negative. What we want to make sure is that when persons get their experiences, do their things, they have the space to come back here and to contribute. I was speaking with someone who wants to make sure they can get a teaching degree and assistance from the government on the teaching degree side so they can come back and teach drama back here in schools. It's those type of things that we need to make sure that we do the best to make them available.
That makes sense. I think that another thing that obviously there's a lot of different terms for it, and I'm sure that there are a lot of better terms that I can use, but in terms of the amount of violence and antisocial behavior that's happening in Bermuda, and then in terms of any unnecessary factors that are contributing to that, I have a bit of a two-pronged question for you.
Okay.
So firstly, I wanted to ask, with the decriminalization of marijuana, are you guys intending to erase stop list records or erase records of those who have been imprisoned for marijuana sales so far, even if that's just stop list records that are up to the limit of 7 grams? Is that any of your plans? And then is there a further legalization framework being attempted for marijuana? I understand that the House rejected the original bill, but are there plans to put that bill up again? But really I want to focus on the arrests and people who are currently imprisoned for marijuana-related activities. What is the plan for potentially releasing those records or erasing those records?
So great question. I want to say maybe about 2 years ago we passed a law in Parliament already that allows for the expungement of records already, so that exists. Now when you talk about the stop list, that's not a Bermuda construct. That is a United States construct, and the United States, Bermuda here, we have no control over what they do on their side insofar as the persons of whom they allow to travel to the United States. And so though we may expunge a record here, that doesn't have a determination over what has in the US. Now at the very beginning, when we went to the move for decriminalization way back in 2017, that was to make sure that people were not acquiring criminal records, which would then cause issues for them later in life, such as the US stop list and other things. The US stop list is if you've been convicted of something that is a criminal act, and of course if you don't have that, it stops more people from going into there. But persons who are already there, that is not something that the Bermuda government itself can change because that's set on US law. Insofar as the broader matter, it was not rejected in the House. It passed Parliament. It actually went to Government House. It was rejected by the United Kingdom government. So the elected persons, such as us, we put it in our our election manifesto. It was supported by a broad majority of the electorate. It passed the House of Assembly once. It was turned back by the Senate. It passed the House of Assembly again. The Senate did not approve of it, but under our Constitution, that means it goes to the governor to sign because the Senate cannot hold up things for more than a year. It went to the governor to sign, and the governor did reject it. It's unfortunate.
I had the wrong house.
No problem.
I had the wrong house.
Got that part. Government House. It's unfortunate. It was actually rejected not by the governor, but it was rejected by the UK government. It was actually rejected by the then Foreign Secretary, who then went on to be Prime Minister, who's now now just a regular backbencher, Liz Truss. But it was her, one of her final acts as Foreign Secretary, to reject it and to say that the law cannot go into force. I mean, the government will continue to move along its path and try to find a way to make sure that the objective that voters endorse at the election is going to be met through our laws. I think that we need to take a different approach to how we treat these things. I think they should be addressed as public health issues and not as criminal issues, and that's the way that we're continuing to try to move. But there's some challenges in that as well, because there's the global framework that exists, and so we need to make sure that what we're doing here in Bermuda is responsive to the democratic needs and views, but also can make sure that we pass the international muster, because there's some technicalities that would exist, such as if you have these items and it's not criminal here, but it might be criminal in another jurisdiction, what does that mean for business and registration and banking, etc.? So those are all the things of which we continue to work through. But for the government's perspective, as it was set out in 2017 with decriminalization, set out further with expungement of records to make
Which
sure
I
we can
didn't know,
expunge.
so
Absolutely,
good to know.
expungement does exist, so persons can get their records expunged. And also on the issue of the broader of a licensing regime, because we think that's the best way to go. We're going to continue to progress those issues as best we can, despite the challenges which have been handed to us by the United Kingdom government.
So, switching gears a little bit, I know that this year has been a particularly challenging year when it comes to road deaths and road fatalities. I think that that's probably one of the most pressing issues facing our community right now. And I understand that it's a very complex issue. I understand that there isn't necessarily a simple way to just reduce it. But I want to hear about what steps the government is taking this year in order to help prevent further road fatalities and in order to create a safer space in Bermuda.
Sadly, there's little that the government can do, because a lot of these things are personal choice and personal decisions that are made by persons who are not, acting in responsible ways on the road. I mean, I was heading up to a baby shower yesterday and watching people drive on the road, and it was, it was scary. We're talking about people on, bikes, overtaking on blind corners. We have continued our education efforts. We've continued the matters through the Road Safety Council by making sure they continue to remain active and have funding. I know that they're looking to revise how Project Ride is delivering those things, and that focuses on persons who are, at a younger age to try to embed that in. But it's really difficult and it's really tragic, and the fatalities are one thing, but it's also the longer term injuries as well, which put a huge burden on families, which puts a huge burden on the healthcare system, which drive up overall healthcare costs. And the only space where the government is in is to continue to message around the fact that these choices and decisions that persons make on the road impact themselves, impact their families, and impact the country. But it's really, really, really difficult when you see so many families that have experienced, this trauma. And I know that this is something you're going to be speaking about in your, upcoming album, but it's a lot. And we know that families have been impacted by this. And the only space that we can do is to message from the government, to encourage community persons to continue to message, continue to share that, and for persons, to act more responsibly on the roads. It's really, really, really a challenge.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's definitely, when I view challenges that we face every day and traumas that we all carry, I think that is one of the biggest ones. And it's a difficult action. I understand that it's definitely limited, so that's good to hear. I would love to at least personally keep tabs on how Project Ride being changed is implemented, because I think that is actually a really key way. I think that education early on is an excellent way to help curb those things.
Yeah, you have to educate road users from young.
Yeah.
And the fact is that, that helps, but still people do engage in very poor road habits. And, unfortunately, it's mostly Bermudians.
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying? I mean, we have an international community here. There are some, road deaths or motorcycle deaths from the international community, but by and large, it is us, it is the Bermudians that are, believe that we are, invincible on the roads in some instance, and engage in behaviors which we know are risky, which are just not okay.
It's not the way. So last question, real quick. I think that there's a number of issues present. There's a number of, it's exciting to see the ways that you guys are planning to attack them, and it's exciting to see the ways that you guys already have. I know that you probably talked to Dion about creating space and opportunities for artists. I know that was one of the first things I mentioned, but I truly believe that art is one of the ways that we can help make Bermuda a safer place, a more beautiful place, and even a more profitable place. So I wanted to ask for, other than things, so obviously there's spaces like Bermuda Arts Council and the Department of Culture, but I wanted to ask, how can artists create more opportunities for themselves, and how can the government help artists create opportunities for them to get their work done, executed, funded, all of that? And I also want to know personally, from you personally, how you think art could be helpful in making a more beautiful and safer Bermuda.
Well, let me start here. I am probably the worst artist you will find.
Yeah?
I have difficulty drawing stick figures correctly, but that's just me. But I mean, art is broad. I mean, you know, it's the regular arts, you know, traditional arts before, you know, there's digital art, there's electronic media. There's so many different parts about that. One of the things that the government did launch, which was in our election platform, was the National Cultural Heritage Policy. And part of that is making sure that we do provide more support for the arts. And I think you've seen that coming from the Department of Culture, which has a real focus on making sure that we do provide more support for the arts. But what I think is most important is trying to meld the international community that we have here to the local artist community as well, for that support, for that level of funding, etc. Because from art, of course, art is what people like to consume and what they choose to consume. For the government's perspective about trying to choose for others, I don't think that's the space we want to be.
Fair enough.
But we certainly want to be in a space where we create closer connections between the international community and the local community so they can support those efforts independently and link, such as, you know, they all outfit their offices with various pieces of art, they all outfit their homes with various pieces of art, and it's along those lines by making sure that we create a better synergy, I think, between that can assist with that focus. Also, there are persons who want, you know, to invest in spaces and other things that can help and give artists a space to continue to work and to develop. And I think that that's important, and those are some of the things that I know the Ministry of Youth, Culture and Sport is looking at. One of the things also that I think is interesting is when we talk about digital art, and actually when you speak about you know, more revenue for the country, I think that we can do a better job of integrating digital artists with our traditional tourism spaces. So whether you're here, you know, you can set up things that are augmented reality here in Botanical Gardens where people go to see, you know, looking at our forts and other things, and that allows our digital artists to go ahead and to participate. That allows even our local artists and our storytellers to be able to go ahead and put those things out and be able to monetize those items in a fashion that would be helpful to support artists in the long term. And I think that that's the direction that I know the Department of Culture is pressing ahead with, along with tourism. And I think that that's the best way so that people can experience our culture and can you know, get a different feel rather, you know, looking at something and reading a board or a sign.
Yeah, fair enough. Shout out to Department of Culture, by the way. I know I'm not supposed to look at the camera, but shout out to Department of Culture. They be doing amazing things and providing spaces. Shout out to Bermuda Arts Council. Shout out to Carly. Beautiful people. Thank you, Mr. Premier.
No problem. Well, it's an absolute pleasure to sit off with you, and I
thank you. And shout out the sit off. I'm gonna do it facing him now.
You see, you didn't even give me an opportunity. I was going to say that I look forward to your new album, Sit Off, and certainly you're touching on a number of important topics. And I think that it is important that we support our own and we talk about the challenges and the trauma which as a collective society we are facing, and hopefully that can assist in bringing healing and also a change of mindset for persons as we go forward. So best wishes to you on that, my friend.
That's the goal. I think that it's a solid project. I think that it's something that we as a whole can rally behind, and I'm really excited for people to hear it. So thank you.
Take care,
Have an amazing day.